Hi there. Welcome, everybody. So glad that you're joining us today. We have a really great show and a great guest lined up for you. Unfortunately, Father Shawn is unable to be with us. He is dealing with some major health problems with his wife, and we appreciate any and all prayers and donations. There is a GoFundMe page, and the name of that page is Sharon's Fight to Beat Cancer. Um, Last name is Sharon Whittington, and any help is appreciated. He extends his apologies for not being able to be here. Father Shawn is a priest with the old old Catholic Church, and he's an author. You might know him from being on the Travel Channel. Eli Roth presents the Legion of Exorcists. They had a marathon yesterday. That shows on Travel Channel, also Max, also HBO Plus. He is the author of 2 books, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, Volumes 1 and 2. These are really great books. They're collections of his cases. And that is another way that you can help Father Shawn. His books are available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle, and also from his website, ghostbegone.biz, where you can get a signed copy. Also, you could make a donation through ghostbegone.biz if you can't find the GoFundMe page for Sharon. I am Annette Munich. I am the owner of Stellium Books. I do have a new book to talk about today, which is Gatsby by James Baxter. Really fabulous book. If you enjoyed The Great Gatsby, you might really love this book. I know I did. It talks about the time period where Gatsby went from being a little boy and growing up to be the man that he was, and the circumstances that formed that and the decisions that were made along the way. Very beautifully done, very holding on to the tradition of the story by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Our guest today, which everybody's looking forward to, another author. I'm a book girl. That's the way I like it. Never get enough. Maxim W. Furek. He's with us, and I'm going to bring him on right now. Maxim, welcome so much.
Very good. Annette, can you hear me?
I do hear you, and you hear me?
I can,
We
and
can
just for the listeners out there, it's pronounced Maxim,
Maxim.
not the Canadian or French Maxim,
Oh.
but Maxim.
Oh,
And that was from my Ukrainian grandfather. So
nice.
yeah, I know. I thought, yeah. So
Maxim.
Yeah, Maxim. So so how you doing? And let's see, the last time we chatted was January 9th of this year.
We chatted in January. It was a super fun show. We were talking about Smurl. People will probably like to ask questions and talk about that again. And what we're talking about right now is Smurl. The Smurl haunting when Ed and Lorraine came to town.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the book that inspired the movie The Conjuring Last Rites.
Pretty much. Well, the topic inspired Conjuring Last Rites.
Okay.
It was about the infestation in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. The Roman Catholic family being terrorized by demonic forces, and the Conjuring Last Rites motion picture came out September 5th, I believe, 2025, and my book preceded that by about 4 or 5 months. So I had been investigating the Smurl haunting for a number of years, and actually I was kind of close to it because West Pittston is close to where I live in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania.
Nice.
And then I had the opportunity to meet Ed and Lorraine in 1988 when they were on a book signing tour. And I stayed in touch with them over the years until they died. But the other thing is almost like a troika. we went down to Gettysburg to see the demonic Annabelle doll and met Dan Rivera. And that was 2 days before he died, and allegedly of a heart attack. But some people question whether it was a heart attack or maybe it might have been demonic energies
Right.
from Annabelle. So we need to take a look at all these things. And since we're dealing with the paranormal and at times the demonic, well, let's just allow at least that's a possibility. So
that was a very big story that happened to Dan Rivera. And
yeah,
from what I saw about it, I don't know everything. They did try to use utmost care and caution in dealing with that doll. And, you never really know if someone had some kind of serious medical issue, but the whole thing was really strange.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, he died, and I look at the fact that Lorraine Warren, and keep in mind that Annabelle was taken from the Warren Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut.
Right.
But that was pretty much against Lorraine's wishes. She wanted those artifacts, and especially Annabelle, to stay there in Connecticut. And in 2025, some of the folks from the New England Society for Psychic Research decided to put together the Devils on the Run tour, and they took Annabelle around to places like San Antonio, Texas, New Orleans, the West Virginia Penitentiary, and then of course Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where I saw the doll and also met Dan Rivera. So it was a lucrative tour. They made a lot of money from this, and also, unfortunately, a young man, Dan Rivera, who was a former Methodist, who converted to Catholicism. And when I met him, I mean, what we did is we talked a lot about what I call God talk. We talked about Christianity, and we talked about things like, and he did that. Although the power of the devil is great, the power of God is mightier, and things like that. So, all these guys there that were at the Gettysburg Annabelle site I believe, were Christians, and they espoused their Christian faith. But Dan especially, and again, he talked a lot about having converted to Catholicism, and just a great guy, a family guy, a veteran, so treated me pretty good. I thought he was a nice guy.
Very, very sorry to hear that all that happened. Me personally, I think it's kind of dangerous to do that with a cursed object. I would go beyond saying haunted objects. I would say a cursed object.
Yeah. And even if we want to say that, if you want to argue the point and say, well, maybe it wasn't demonic, maybe there weren't demonic energies, maybe there were, how could I say this? Maybe demonic human energies, maybe that doll was infused by the thoughts of so many people, thousands and thousands of people that saw Annabelle, that believed she was demonic and just projected these energies there and created something. And we've heard about this before. The mind is a powerful thing. It's capable of doing a whole lot of things. And, when you talk about the power of, many minds together, whether it's a coven of 12 or fewer, or if it's a Christian prayer circle where all these people get together and use their innate abilities for healing and helping, then, just maybe something else was happening there that we don't know a whole lot about. So again, there's a lot of room for conjecture, and I think the verdict is still out on Dan Rivera.
And we'll never know.
Probably not. Not.
Yeah. And also that Annabelle doll and story has been around for a very long time. Yeah. So there's a lot of people around that know about it, that have an opinion of it, that it generates fear, that might want to in some way get close to it or be repelled from it. It's an emotion generating object.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it conjures fear or, controversy, a whole lot of things. But, we knew about Annabelle from the exploits of Ed and Lorraine Warren, the Roman Catholic demonologist. And with the Conjuring franchise, 9 motion pictures,
Yeah.
3 of them were about Annabelle, 2 were about the nun, and the rest of them were the exploits of Ed and Lorraine. So, very successful horror franchise. Actually, it's my understanding that the Conjuring franchise is the most successful horror franchise, in history, and it worth about $2.7 billion
Wow.
net. So that's
Like
that's something that,
seriously.
yeah, something to of interest. Just incredible that. Well, what's incredible too is why is there such a worldwide fascination for the demonic, for the exploits of Ed and Lorraine Warren, for the rite of exorcism, for all of this stuff that is on the dark side. I mean, imagine that. There's people around the world that can't get enough of this.
Well,
This dance into the demonic.
I think a couple of things, and we could throw a lot of items on the table with this, really. But the one thing I'd like to say is that the thing about Annabelle that's so horrific is that was a Raggedy Ann doll. I had one. I had them for my daughters. We all knew what that was back in the day. It was very common, and a lot of kids had it. Beautiful little doll. You could throw it in the washing machine, drag it around. It
Yeah,
didn't matter.
yeah,
And we had them and we loved them.
yeah,
So if, let's say, if this is demonic attachment and interference, which there's a good chance it could be, it gloms onto something that was a symbol of sweetness, innocence, and turns it into something dark, terrifying, and heinous. Um, so that's not just a huge emotional charge, but really bothers people. And you see that in other things too. A little bit off topic, but I used to love clowns until John Wayne Gacy.
mm-hmm,
So there's different things that we always felt more than safe around. We felt joy around,
mm-hmm.
and then it was turned into something really dark. Um, the fascination with these things, part of it is that because it strikes an emotional chord to someone that had a doll like that when they're like 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
For as long as they could remember, they had that and slept with that. And then that turned into something terrible and terrifying and a symbol of not just haunting, but demonic.
Yeah, yeah. And if you could see in my background there, I have not only Annabelle, or Raggedy Ann, I should say, but also a picture of the nun. And I think I paid $1 for the Annabelle, for the Raggedy Ann doll. But anyway, so, my wife wants to know why I have this doll in my office. But it's just there. It's just show and tell. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and also I just want to say I'm sorry that Father Shawn can't be here. I keep on missing him, but at some point we'll get caught up, hopefully, and have a nice chat too. So
Yeah. And he said to me earlier to make sure that you know that he's sorry that he wasn't able to be here, but sometime in the future, we're going to make it happen and come back on because we love having you. And
yeah,
this show is a platform that's perfect for certain kinds of conversation that you're really good at.
yeah. Well, thank you, but I do want to say this. I had as far as Father Shawn, I had the opportunity to listen to him. He was on the Paranormal Underground podcast in September of 2024. And I was taking notes, but there were a couple of things that he said, actually 5 things that I just wanted to read. These are, like I said, I took notes from this 2024 podcast. But Father Shawn said this. He said, one, we are not in control. We know nothing. We need help. Nobody has all the answers, and we are afraid. So he was talking about the demonic. He was talking about that the devil and demons are real. He talked about conjurers and cursed properties and a lot of the things that he dealt with. I mean, horrible things. And, when you look at one or two things, it may just be a coincidence, but when you see a number of them, sort of like J. Allen Hynek's high strangeness, like elements of high strangeness. And with
Right.
Father Shawn, he was talking about things like black birds attacking, voices, burst water pipes, bees in the garage, noises on the roof, might have been a pterodactyl. I mean, just a sulfur smell, a whole lot of things. So, I mean, he has some stories to tell. And I need to go and get a couple of his books and read about his exploits into the dark side.
His books are so scary. They're the scariest books I ever did. You can't predict what's going to happen next. I'll say a little bit about it. Maybe people will. I don't think I'll give away too much. Plus, also on Eli Roth Presents Legion of Exorcists, some of those stories are his stories.
Okay.
And what they did was they had 6 exorcists, and each episode told 2 stories. And some of those stories were his, but he has some stories in there that are deeply disturbing. One was about an old folks home. That really bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
Possessed patients in an old folks home.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that he handled that with the people that ran the center were not cooperative with him about wanting him to have access to do some of the things that he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was like a traveling gypsy carnival. Another one was a Native American story where the old man was like shape-shifting.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of werewolfy. I mean, you just never knew from one page to the next what was about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really love about his books is that when it gets really intense, he'll say something funny to kind of break that. And then the stories do get resolved. Mm-hmm. And he tells you the prayers and he tells you the procedure of what happened. So that way you see that light always wins over darkness. And curiously, doing his books, I had paranormal activity in my life while I was working on his books. And that's not the first time that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I make jokes about it, but sometimes it's not funny because I feel like whatever is out there, especially books that deal with demonic,
mm-hmm.
whatever is out there, they don't want these stories, especially if there's prayers with it, going out into the world. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is to mess with me, make it take longer, delay. I've had the page numbers be scrambled in a book where, I'm not putting them in by hand. I'm in Microsoft Word, putting in page numbers, come back. The page numbers are scrambled. The pictures in the book are upside down.
Wow. Okay.
Smelling of sulfur.
Right.
Things like that. Sounds like things are falling in the closet and nothing is.
These are what? Signs of infestation? Signs of a haunting? Signs of what?
I think, again, it could be haunting. But if I'm working on a book that's about demonic, then I think it's dark spirits that just don't want the book to go out because once I put the book out, it all stops.
Okay.
once it's out into the world and they can't stop it anymore. Um, we even had, this one's really weird, but I'm making a show about me. I apologize.
No, yeah, it's fine. It's fascinating. I mean, I find it fascinating.
We're on a mini farm out here in Oklahoma. I'm from Chicago originally, but we have big water tanks. And the water tank in the greenhouse um, was totally empty before the day before. It was over halfway full. There was no water on the ground. The spout wasn't open. There was no leak. All the water was just gone. Then another couple of days went by, and then another water tank did that. And again, it's like, where did the water go? Because I'm talking about big water tanks. There's no water on the ground around it. The water's just gone. So I did something that I learned from Father Shawn. We'll do this for Father Shawn from his books, and I thought it was great. I have I bought in bulk Archangel Michael medals, and I had them blessed by a
Yeah.
priest back home, and tied medals to the spigots of all the water tanks, and it stopped. We had more water tanks than that. But that was just kind of crazy, and no explanation and no water on the ground. And it would
Yeah.
be like a lot,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
wasn't. So, and I guess you could say we're way out in the country. Some kids came onto our property to empty our water tanks or something, but we also have 5 dogs.
Hmm.
So that's highly unlikely.
Yeah, sure.
But, it's just things to do to mess with you, aggravate you, slow you down, show you what they can do, a little flex, odd things. And it's to the point that when I'm working on a book that deals with the demonic, that's nonfiction, I tell everybody in my family, and they can tell me if they don't want me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not the only one that gets affected by some of this crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, as soon as the book goes out, it all stops. I really believe they just don't want the books to go out. They try to slow down the books.
It could be that you're in a certain place, you're in a certain vibration that they're coming after. Could be that you're more attuned and more sensitive to, the demonic entities. It's hard to tell. A lot of my friends who are, say, born again Christians, a number of them have reached out to me and told me not to get too close to the flame. Don't get too close to the demonic. And I believe that I approach this more as an academic. I'm just curious about what's on the other side. I'd like to approach it like that. I'm a skeptic. But yeah, I spend a lot of time researching demonology and the rite of exorcism. And I don't know if that makes me a target. I mean, I don't think so, because I think that if you're well grounded, and if you're filled with God's grace, and if you say your prayers, have your holy water, if you do the right thing, I think that then we're well prepared to deal with the demonic. And if you take a look at how Catholics do battle versus Protestants, with us Catholics, we have a very formalized rite of exorcism where we use other people like St. Michael the Archangel and Padre Pio to help do battle with us. A lot of the Protestants believe that no, if you're a believer in Christ, then you have the power yourself to do battle. And that may or may not be true, but I kind of like, and again, I don't want to get into who's right or who's wrong, but being raised Catholic and being a former altar boy, I like the idea of having a ritualized rite of exorcism. And that's in keeping with so many of the folks like Pope Francis and Pope John Paul II, who believed that the devil exists and evil exists, and that's why Pope John Paul II rewrote the rite of exorcism after so many years, and also he convened a college of exorcists, just so that they could learn this medieval rite of exorcism, because he believed that there's evil in the world in the modern day, in the 20th century, now the 21st century, and this is what we need to do. So Catholic theologians and intellectuals who believe that evil is very real and is with us, and we need to do something about it. And having said that, it's not every single case. And even Father Amorth, who was the Vatican's chief exorcist, wonderful individual who did thousands and thousands of exorcisms. His story was told in the Pope's Exorcist, a movie from 2017 with Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Very true to life. But Father Amorth, and in my book, The Smurl Haunting, when Ed and Lorraine came to town, I have a chapter called The 2%. Father Amorth believed that 98% of the people that we do, that the Catholic Church deals with, who claim to be possessed, are actually schizophrenic. They're dealing with types of mental illness, either schizophrenia or Tourette's syndrome, that very violent, profane neurological disease, or bipolar, or maybe even being on methamphetamine or some other hallucinatory drugs. He said that the church is only concerned about the 2%, and they have to make sure that we use not only theologians and religious people and exorcists, but also psychologists and psychiatrists to determine whether or not these people we're dealing with are actually are mentally ill, or they're possessed by demonic spirits. So that's the one thing, one of the most important criteria that we have. And it was notoriously made famous by what happened with a young woman from Germany. They had an exorcism, a series of exorcisms, and she died. And the two priests and her parents were put on trial and found guilty. And to this day, the country of Germany does not formally allow exorcisms in that country. And that was, I think her name was Annalise, and she died a horrible death. And after she had died, the church concluded that she had schizophrenia and maybe some other illnesses that she was dealing with, but she wasn't. She thought she was possessed, but that was part of her mental illness. So it was a tough case, and it was tragic, and she died. So
Yeah, they do that, where people have to go for a mental and physical evaluation, and because there are other things that can cause symptoms and crazy behavior and crazy thoughts. On the flip side of that, I would think that there were also mental institutions that had people in there with paranormal problems, conversely, because
oh yeah, good point. Yeah,
this is very hard to sort out.
Mm-hmm. And the one case that comes to mind is Richard Sharp Shaver, with the Shaver, hi Michelle, with the Shaver mystery. And I have followed him closely because Richard Sharp Shaver and I were both born in Berwick, Pennsylvania.
Nice.
Northeastern Pennsylvania. And Richard Sharp Shaver claimed that he was captured by evil robots, the Deros, and held prisoner in these subterranean caves. And then Ray Palmer, Rapp, his publicist, confided or outed him and said that no, he wasn't trapped, but he was institutionalized in Michigan, and that instead of spending 7 years in the caves with the Deros, he was actually spending 7 years in the mental institution, probably being subjected to shock treatment, because back then in the 40s, we didn't have Thorazine and Millaril, which right now are the psychotropic drugs du jour that people use. And back then, whatever medications they used, it was a lot cheaper to do shock treatment with these people that were schizophrenic rather than to use medication that was more expensive. So Richard Sharp Shaver, Annette, as you sort of alluded to, believed that he was the only sane person in an insane world. And he just flipped it. So they tried to say that he was insane, but whatever name you want to put on Richard Sharp Shaver, he was, I think, pretty much a genius. And people believed his story, much like they believed the stories of Padre Pio, which is a pretty interesting parallel there. With Richard Sharp Shaver, a lot of people believe that his stories about being a prisoner of these subterraneans was true. With Padre Pio, the Vatican could not understand why all these people were going to Padre Pio's church in Italy, and they couldn't believe that thousands of people were being convinced that Padre Pio's fantasies were true. And that's what the Vatican felt, but they weren't fantasies. Padre Pio was a mystic. He was a saint. He performed miracles. He had the stigmata of Christ. He bled and suffered. And also he had the gift of bilocation.
Yep.
He was seen in several places at the same time, physically seen, physically talking, moving, and documented numerous times. So call it what you will, but I believe, I have a theory that everything is everything. And there's very little light in between the paranormal, the scientific, and the spiritual. I think that they're all pretty much the same. And when you're talking about miracles and apparitions and bilocation and stigmata and everything, I mean, that is has a supernatural element to it, because we don't know what the scientific explanation is. So, I just think that theory, again, everything is everything. It's pretty simplistic, but I believe it's true. So
I love Padre Pio. He was my grandma's favorite, my little Italian grandma.
mhm.
And something very special about him, besides the magnificent story of what he was, is that this is somebody that was alive during our times,
Mhm.
which makes it very relatable. I think he died in the late 60s.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And so I think that makes him very relatable. And what a story with the stigmata. And he knew things about people. And he asked his guardian angels for a lot, and they helped him. He also, they say he was attacked regularly at night by demonic forces.
Mhm.
So he
and-
went through a lot of that.
And thrown out of his bed.
Yes. Very, very interesting story. And he's incorrupt. So people can go and see his body. And I think that there are a few places that they had to put a little bit of touch up. But other than that, he was perfect. Like I said, from the late 60s when he died till now, he looks like he's sleeping. And we have a lot of incorrupt saints.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. There's a Padre Pio monastery in Bartow, Pennsylvania, about
Nice.
2 hours from where I live. And it's just a wonderful place. And there was an inscription there that really impacted on me. He said that, similar to what Dan Rivera and those guys were saying in Gettysburg, but Padre Pio had said that the might of the devil is great, but I go to the Blessed Mother for strength. That's what he said. So
Beautiful. And I know that he also prayed the rosary silently all through the day.
Mhm.
Somebody asked him, how many rosaries do you think you say in a day? And he said more than 30. So whenever he was in a quiet time, he was going back to the prayers. And that is a beautiful way to stay in grace. Now, we can go very into Catholic land, which I will. And I'm a member of Father Chad Ripperger's Auxilium Christianorum. I don't know if you know about that,
I do
but
not. No, no.
at the last that I knew, we had 40,000 people. Every night we say devotional prayers and we pray a rosary every day. And it's for support of priests and all other people that are in spiritual warfare.
Right. Okay.
So it's like a support network for people out there that are doing the hard stuff. And Father Chad Ripperger also has a book, Deliverance Prayers for the Laity. And he's an exorcist, if anyone doesn't know who Father Chad Ripperger is.
Mhm.
So that's very interesting. But
But
that,
and let me just say this: with that state of spiritual warfare, with the way the devil operates, it's all about temptation. That's the beginning of this. And I think that these priests, these exorcists, are continuously under attack and
yeah,
being tempted and
yeah,
being worn down, and it's ongoing. So the
yeah,
prayers from your group, I think, are needed, are really well needed.
yeah. I don't remember who said this, but somebody said, I don't understand about monks. What good does it do? Go live by yourself, be quiet, bake bread. What good does it do?
Big
And a
breath.
priest said, monks are holding up the world. Monks are living in humility, grace, and silent prayer. And
Mhm.
they're offering up all of that every day in support of, spiritual warfare, grace.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's so funny how one person could say, what is the point of this? And
Well,
somebody else is like, again, a support network. I think that we live in very dark times. I'm not
yeah.
going to get into a lot of it, but I think we live in very dark times. I'm wondering, um, have you like heard about Pope Leo the 13th and him writing the Archangel Michael prayer and him having that vision where he said that demons were going to be in control of our planet for 100 years?
No, was this recently?
Pope Leo the 13th, that was early 1900s.
Okay, no.
He was one of the first people, period, to ever be um, on film. When film
Okay.
first came out, they have film of him. So he says this, that he had a vision and that Satan was given control over our planet for 100 years. And he is the one that wrote the Archangel Michael prayer, which used to be said after every mass until sometime around Vatican II, and they started easing that out, which they
Oh,
probably shouldn't have.
okay, that's
But
Pope.
now it's kind of a little bit of a sign. We have Pope Leo the 14th. He chose that name. And people say it's either been 100 years or it's almost 100 years. And that's why everything seems so dark now, because it just keeps pushing and ramping up and doubling down, doubling down, doubling down.
Right, yeah. That was one reason why I wanted to write the Paranormal Apocalypse. Is this how it ends? I just thought that the there was something really gloomy happening in the world. There
Yeah,
was a lot of divide. There were no voices of moderation, and not only just in politics, but even in religious groups. And so, there was just no coming together, and there
yeah,
were very few voices who wanted to go and bring us together. So, for some reason, there was just so much anger and people castigating other people. So, I wrote the book looking at that fear. And in the beginning of the book, I used, and I believe H.P. Lovecraft was able to go and articulate this better than any psychiatrist, psychologist, or theologian. H.P. Lovecraft said that the most powerful human emotion is that of fear, and the most powerful of all is the fear of the unknown. And I think that's what a lot of us are concerned with. And when you talk about the end times, the eschatology, the eschatologists looking at the end times and how's this going to end. But I think a lot of us are looking at things like wondering. I mean, with with World War III, I mean, how close are we getting to that? Again, it waxes and wanes. It looks like maybe we're, getting things, settled or rectified over in Iran, but we still have North Korea, we still have Russia, we still have China, we have a lot of unknown variables, and who knows if they might just strike at any time. But with the fear, like how will it end? People think about maybe World War III. They think of the global pandemics, and we know that with COVID from what was it, 1919 and or 2019 and 2020, with all those people worldwide that died, and now we have a variant of the COVID virus that seems to be immune to the inoculation, to the shot. And so we don't know what's going to happen in the summertime, but some of the people that are in the know believe that it's going to be a wicked summer with the reemergence of this COVID pandemic. So again, there's reasons to be concerned, but whether it's World War III, whether it's pandemics, whether it's man-made disasters or weather-related crises. I remember the one that comes to mind is, I believe it was Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, and the mountains of around Asheville were flooded, floods of biblical proportions. They had never seen that in that part of the world and part of the country, and the floodwaters just went straight up, and they were just inundated with that. But end times with the apocalypse. But I think a lot of people too are concerned about economic uncertainty. Like, am I going to have money to make it through? Am I going to have enough money to live on when I retire? Am I going to have enough money to pay my bills, given that the price of everything is going up? And what do? Do you pay your rent, or do you buy the food for the table? So there's a lot of that economic uncertainty, especially with people that are at the bottom tiers of the socioeconomic spectrum that are suffering now as we speak. I mean, there's a lot of people that are really dealing with hardship and struggling. And for the greatest country on earth, we have a pocket. We have a certain percentage of people that are poor and they're struggling just to survive. And this is unacceptable when you take a look at the wealth that we have in the world and the wealth that we have in the United States. There's something that I don't know what the solution is, but there's too much suffering, and it would seem that when people look towards the end times or believe that they're coming, there's a lot of uncertainty. H.P. Lovecraft was correct.
When you say paranormal apocalypse, how do you feel like the paranormal becomes part of it? Because we could just, at this point, I'll say something really gloomy.
Yeah.
Every day feels like anything can happen day. So we could do an apocalypse without any help from the paranormal. Yeah. So how are you weaving those together?
Yeah, I weave them together in every way that I could, because like I said, my personal philosophy is everything is everything. Everything's together, where it's spiritual, scientific, philosophical, paranormal. It doesn't matter. They're all together. We just have a hard time finding out where the boundaries are. Certainly with the paranormal, we know that there's some connection to the scientific, but if you don't know the rules, if you don't know the cause and effect of the science, then you can't weed out, what's happening. I was told by Dr. Frederick Lamont Santee. He was a white witch. He was in charge of the Coven of the Kata in northeastern Pennsylvania. And Dr. Santee said that there's no difference between the supernatural. He told me, between the supernatural and the scientific. They're all the same. We just don't know what the rules are. I talk about H.P. Lovecraft, one of the greatest paranormal authors of all time. certainly doesn't have the commercial recognition as does an Edgar Allan Poe, but H.P. Lovecraft has to be second. He's the one who triggered the Ancient Aliens. I mean, everything that Eric von Daniken did with Ancient Aliens, that's under the guise of the paranormal. Everything that he did was he copied from H.P. Lovecraft. So I talk about H.P. Lovecraft in my first chapter, and I have a chapter called The Last Man on Earth. And this was Vincent Price. Now think about this. This was a motion picture, a wonderful motion picture from the early 1960s.
I loved him.
And Vincent Price, it was black and white. It was an American-Italian film. And in the end, Vincent Price, who is Dr. Robert Morgan, and he's surrounded by these vampires, these zombie vampires that have been inflicted by this plague. And he goes around killing them and then burning them. That's his mission. And he has to kill his wife, who turned into a vampire. But towards the end, he goes to a church, and the vampire zombies surround him, and they stick a spear in his side. And just like Christ, he dies on the altar, and he calls these zombies freaks. He goes, "You're nothing but freaks." But what he did was he made the last stand as the last man on earth. He let them know that they're freaks, and he is a man. And and I talk a little bit about that the reason that man, humankind, rules the earth is because we are made in the image and likeness of God, and that's because we have an abundance of DNA. More is better. We have more cognition, and we have more spirituality, and that's why man rules the planet. And even though people say, well, animals have language, and animals can use tools, and animals can this and that, and they can, and it's great, and it's wonderful, but not as man does. Man goes to the moon, and man makes planes and ships and cars and medicines and everything else. So again, we are godlike in that we have large amounts of spirituality, and I think a lot of us need to go and demonstrate that, but also we have large amounts of cognition. And when you look at stimulus, cognition, response, this is what we should do as humans. With animals, it's stimulus, response. Something happens, they just respond to it. With us, before we respond, we should think, look at the possibilities, and then do that. So, man rules, and I talked about that in the Last Man on Earth, which I recommend all your listeners to take a look at. It's probably free on Tubi or one of those other programs on TV.
Very interesting. We got Karen here saying, studying end times biblically in the 90s, we discussed when this would roll out. It's definitely happening now. And that's really interesting. I'm going to say pro and con on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
We like to throw on the table.
Well, this invites discussion, so go ahead.
This does.
Bring it.
I remember being a kid back in Chicago. Every time you went downtown, there would be someone holding a sign, "The end is near. End of days is coming. Revelation," all of that. So I'm saying I've seen people talking like this my whole life. I feel like we are in end times, but end times could take 3 years, 100 years. Who knows? It feels like I said before that anything could happen. It feels like the energy in the world, there's a lot of mean-spirited corruption.
Right.
Like it's an abscess ready to burst.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, we sort of follow our leaders. We sort of follow the mindset of our leaders. We follow their example. I remember as a young man when John F. Kennedy, he was our beloved president, and when he said, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what can I do for my country? And he motivated and inspired so many kids to do things like to join the Peace Corps. One man making a difference, and I think we need leaders like that today, leaders that are not divisive, but leaders that can bring us together and inspire us. And that is what is lacking. We don't have that positivity. We don't have that positive motivation. We have none of that. And that's why we're really going through some very difficult times now.
I really agree, and I hope that we go through a renaissance. I feel like we're about to come out of dark times into something where I hope that people get back into being creative, and whatever it is that you're good at, do it, and not be on the screen. The screen is all. I believe we live in a lot of political theater, of sensationalism, fake
Absolutely.
stuff, get you scared, big headlines, tell you what to think, and keep people engaged with this little phone. Does it belong to you, or do you belong to it?
Mm-hmm. I think if you keep people in chaos, keep them off balance, keep them in fear, you can control them. And that's what you do. And I think what's happening now with all the nonsense, and again, Annette, you're right, it's called political theater. With all the political theater, so many of us are disgusted and miserable and frustrated. Then rather being engaged in the process, we take a step back and we disengage and we become numb. And so I think this is one of the plans that some of these leaders are doing. They want us to be numb. They want us to disengage so they can control and manipulate more and more and more. And this, I think, is the definition of evil. They're taking away our choices, and it's horrible. And I hope, and I'm sure your podcast is not a political podcast, but I just hope that Americans, will go and register to vote and vote, because that's the only way we can turn this around and let our voices be heard.
I see a little silver lining in what you said, because the more people get burnt out, the more, and I hear a lot of people saying this all around the country. They're like, yeah, I saw that, but I don't know what to think about it, because now with the advent of AI, is that a real picture? I don't know. Did that really happen? Are they clipping things to make it look like this or make it look like that? And people get exhausted. And then what happens is they start to lose control of the people, where they're looking at things going, maybe that happened, maybe it didn't happen. I don't know what to think, because we've been on this roller coaster now for a while.
Yeah.
And every day it's something else, and we understand who hates who, and we understand who's trying to chop who off at the knees. So whatever your opponent is, they're evil and the bad guy. And it's sometimes a distraction, so you don't look or think about other things that are going on. But a lot of it's just really kind of wicked. And
but again, I mean, just like with you and I mean, we are talking respectfully. We're not calling each other names. We're not castigating each other. We're not having nicknames for each other. We're allowing each other to speak. We're not being prejudiced against each other. I mean, we're doing all the right things. That's the message that our political leaders or our political leader should be giving us. And that is not happening. What's happening? It's ugly. It's ugly out there. And, and this has to change. The thing I said before about fear, using fear as a means of manipulation. In my book, Paranormal Apocalypse, I talk about these cult leaders, and so many of them, like Jim Jones in the American Apocalypse, was able to convince, close to, hundreds and hundreds of people to come down to Guyana in South America to escape the nuclear war. And he was promising them paradise, and it was nothing but that. But over 900 people committed suicide with taking that
Kool-Aid.
The Kool-Aid with cyanide and Valium and chlorohydrate. And that was in December of 1978, because I know exactly where I was at the time. I was in Rock Springs, Wyoming, in a cabin with no television, newspaper, anything. And when I came out into civilization, the first thing I heard was like, kapow, did you hear about the 900 people that committed suicide down with Father Jim Jones? And what he did was he kept them scared, and he preached that he was a deity, that he was like Christ.
Right.
And that's what these evil people do, these cult leaders, whether it's David Koresh, whether it's Heaven's Gate, they all did the same thing in Heaven's Gate. Applegate said that him and his lady friend were mentioned in Revelations, but they all used the Bible as their means of seducing their congregants into winning them over, using the Bible for evil purposes. So again, these are people, again, this is in keeping with our conversation here, people that have given up on self. They've given up on their opinions and their right to choose. And what they do is, because of their fear, they follow like little lemmings. They follow all the other lemmings, following the leader, believing that this leader is going to keep them safe from harm. Follow me and you'll be safe. And they do nothing like that. Reverend Jim Jones was a horrible, horrible human being.
Oh, yeah. And for young people, we're running out of time, but for young people that weren't around, that's where that expression comes from, drinking the Kool-Aid.
Right.
That's where it comes from. Jim Jones, that was terrible. And David Koresh, I lived in Austin, Texas when
Children of God, yeah.
That was just, when you really look at it and you realize how far people can be manipulated, mind controlled to a certain extent, caused to believe different things. Do I think that's in our current society? I absolutely think it is. Yeah. But, we could probably talk for about 2 more hours, but we don't have the time to do it.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, very good. Okay. But thank you so much. If any of your listeners have any interest in checking me out, I have a website. It's www.maximfurek.com. And if they're interested in any of my books, they could contact me for a signed copy. And I would only ask this, Annette. If they were to purchase any of my books, I would ask them to also write a review for Amazon, because this is what us authors really need. So it's
a lot of people don't really know that, but it helps so much with the books to get some reviews. And also, I believe if it's still the way it was, when you cross over 50 reviews, Amazon really helps push your book.
Good.
There's a line there if you get to 50.
Good. I got that with Coleridge and Hoodoo and the Shepton mythology. So
and I would love to talk about some of your other books as well. I think they look fascinating. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love talking to you. Like you said, if everybody just sat down and throw it on the table and just talk about it, different aspects of different things, I think we would get a lot farther.
Respectfully, yes.
Yes, instead of a tug of war.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, which is where we are, I think, on a lot of things. But
you're not doing it. You're doing the right thing, and I think I am too. So at least there's 2 of us. So we could go 2 more and 2 more. We could change the world.
I think the older generation has to set an example, because we remember when times weren't quite so tumultuous and ugly. There's a lot of ugly. There's a lot of instant ugly, and it's terrible, because I think people are more alike than different. If they really talked about it, you might have a couple of things that you don't agree on, and that becomes a big deal. But overall, more alike than different. More alike than different, for sure. And we came from a time where, if you remember, I can go over a few minutes. If you remember, when we were young, you didn't really tell anybody who you voted for. You didn't ask. And you didn't tell anybody if you went to church or not. Like, that was considered kind of rude to ask, and people got along. And it wasn't everything brought up and shoved in everybody's face all the time. And I think it's better that way, that it should be personal to an extent.
Yeah.
You don't have to defend your religion. You don't have to defend all of your issues every moment of every day. You can live and let live to some degree. Say
Yeah, but-
what you think and let somebody else say what they think and really listen.
But you know what I think too, not to throw a wrench into your thought, but I think with some of the younger people today, I think they're having a conversation. We never had it during our generation, but I think they're having a conversation of how do you identify, him, her, or it. And we've never had that. And I think that these young people are looking at this and trying to figure out if there's more than, what they think they are. And a lot of this we don't understand, but it's seems to be a topic with younger people. So, I don't know. I don't know, how to look at that, how to embrace that, because I don't know that much about it.
What I would love to do, I would love for you and I to, this is April 10th, 2026. I'd love to in a year see what has changed in the world on the topics that we spoke of today.
Okay.
That would be interesting. What we've learned, what ways things have headed, what issues seem to have faded away, what issues seem to be more prominent.
See if the pandemic hit.
Yeah, and all of the
see if the prices
paranormal
went up or down. Yeah.
paranormal occurrences, and just kind of like the general take the temperature of what's going on.
And see if Paranormal Apocalypse, is this how it ends, reaches 50 reviews on Amazon.
That would be lovely. That would be perfect.
Yes, I know.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed having you here. Such a great conversation. We could go on for days, I'm sure, because I really enjoy it.
I appreciate it. And listen, I was just wondering if you could do me a personal favor.
Sure.
And when you talk to Michelle DeRoche, could you have her send me maybe a case of Canadian maple syrup?
Oh, yeah, everybody likes maple syrup.
Just as a nice little token.
I want that too. Everybody likes Canadian maple syrup, right?
Okay. I hope Michelle's listening.
She might be. She's at the station because I was talking to her before the show, right before you came.
Okay.
For everybody, Maxim W. Furek, author. We will have him back again soon. Many thanks to all of our listeners. Have a lovely night, a lovely weekend. We love you. We appreciate you. Please keep Father Shawn in your prayers.
Right.
And many thanks to you, PRN Talk Radio, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, 105.3 FM in the Gulf Coast. And we will be back next week with Heather Lee Landon, another author. We had a great show with her. She had about haunted lighthouses and ghost ships in Florida. That was really cool. Okay. And stay tuned for Spirit Switchboard with Carrie Lynn Shellhorn coming up next. Thank you so much. Thanks. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye. Thank you.